Welcome to your Astro Forecast for the week of November 6th. I'm Sarah Nicole. This is Twisted Goddess Tarot, and my mission is to help you understand the cosmic energies and navigate them with greater awareness. If you're watching right now, you're probably watching the replay. If that's the case, go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know so I can come back and say hi to you. This is always available for the replay, so if you missed anything, you can come back and watch it all throughout the week. So before we dive into this week's astrological forecast, I would like to back up a little bit and discuss some of the energies from last week, since I was away at my sister's wedding last week. And we did have a few big events last week that I wanted to back up. Let's pause before we start looking ahead, back up. And last week we had Goddess Asteroid Vesta station retrograde. We had Saturn station direct. We had the last quarter moon. So I want to talk about those energies since we didn't get to last week before we move forward. So first, on Thursday, November 2nd last week, Vesta, Goddess Asteroid Vesta stationed retrograde and will continue her retrograde cycle until she stations direct on February 8th. So that's the one reason I wanted to back up, because this is going to impact us for a little while. Vesta represents the sacred flame, the little light inside of us that keeps us ignited. Okay, so she influences what we're committed to and what we're dedicated to and where we're willing to sacrifice. For instance, for me in my personal birth chart, Vesta sits in my 8th house, which covers all things taboo, all the things you don't traditionally discuss around the dinner table with your more traditional family, right? So it's no surprise that like my commitment is in delving into the mysterious and the magical via metaphysical studies. So while we all have that natal Vesta placement, so you're going to have a place where Vesta is in your birth chart that's going to stay with you for your whole life, we are also influenced by where she currently is, which is the transiting energies. And those transiting energies are what we talk about on this Astro Forecast. We're talking about the transiting energies, okay? So what you have on your birth chart is going to be a little bit different, but we're all collectively being influenced and layering that in, the transiting energies, the current astrological energies, with our personal natal energies as well, okay? So since she will begin her retrograde cycle in Cancer, we may be reviewing past emotions and past family patterns, because you see, retrograde is always about reviewing the past. No matter what planet or asteroid or dwarf planet is stationing retrograde, retrogrades are always about reviewing the past, looking back, going back over our past steps. So a sense of nostalgia can be felt as we determine whether we want to keep those past energies and those past family patterns. Is that still what keeps our inner flame ignited, or is it actually acting like water and putting out our fire, putting our fire out? So we're going to be reviewing that, especially things that we have emotional attachment to. Cancer, it is the very first water sign. It is the very first delve into the emotional realm, right? And we can have some strong attachment to those. Hey, Chelsea. She'll retrograde back into Gemini, where we can move from our feeling realm into our logical realm. So this is really going to be a good time to review those nostalgic feelings or family patterns, and then moving it into Gemini, which is more in the logical realm, make our conscious choices on our environments, because Gemini is heavily related to our local environments, in order to create a space where we can burn brightly. So that's what Vesta retrograde is going to be all about until February 8th. Okay, so that's a big one. That's one reason I want to back up and talk about that, because that's going to be impacting us and affecting us. And it's our inner flame. It's our inner light. It's what allows us to burn bright and be dedicated to something and have commitment to something. So this is important. And then last week on Saturday, November 4th, we had Saturn stationing direct at 0 degrees Pisces after being retrograde since June 17th. So Saturn sometimes gets a bad reputation, since it is the planet of restrictions and limitations, but really Saturn is our greatest teacher. Once we learn how to work with Saturn and learn that those roadblocks that Saturn puts in front of us are to teach us resilience and are to teach us wisdom and are to teach us how to overcome, we have a much better relationship with Saturn. I'm Saturn dominant, so I'm a big fan of Saturn. So he gives us restrictions and limitations to show us how to overcome them and how to increase our wisdom. He teaches us responsibility. One time I heard someone speak about responsibility in terms of Saturn and said he shows us how to respond to our abilities. Woo, that one stuck with me, right? I love that. When we think about responsibility being responding to our abilities and showing up in a way that is responding to our abilities and knowing our strengths and knowing our weaknesses, right? Sometimes Saturn shows us where our weaknesses are and how we have to work around those weaknesses. So when Saturn is retrograde, we're often reviewing past lessons. We're often having to reclaim our authority, and we're often having to set boundaries or reset boundaries. Okay. So as Saturn stations direct, we're now ready to move forward again with new clarity on our responsibility to ourselves and to the collective. If it's felt like the last 4 months has been full of testing boundaries, you can expect that to slow down because that's some of Saturn retrograde. It's saying, are you being your own authority, right? I call my block button on social media the Saturn button because it's like, whoop, boundary, restriction, limitation, like that is Saturn's energy. To put it in like modern terms, right? That's Saturn's energy. You should also have clearer priorities now that Saturn has stationed direct as well. You can look to see what house or houses, if you're using Placidus, Pisces falls in your personal birth chart to see where you are learning those lessons and where you're taking responsibility while Saturn transits through Pisces, because Saturn is going to be transiting through Pisces well into 2025. So we're going to be working with this energy for quite some time. So it's very important for you to get familiar on some of these longer transiting planets. You know, Mars moves quickly, Mercury moves quickly. And so sometimes it's good to really look at where these longer transiting planets are at in your personal birth chart, because it's energy that's going to stick around for a while, right? It's energy that is going to stick around for a while. So as Saturn now continues its transit through Pisces, remember that we're collectively learning how to bring some structure, Saturn, to the flow, Pisces, how to bring practicality, Saturn, to spirituality, Pisces, how to practice embodiment, Saturn, while we are ascending to new heights, Pisces, head in the clouds, feet planted firmly on the ground. That is the theme of Saturn in Pisces well into 2025. Also last week on Sunday, November 5th, we had a last quarter moon at 12 degrees of Leo. Here's the card. It says to lighten up. So the last quarter moon occurs when the sun creates a challenging square aspect to the waning moon, while the energy of the moon is releasing. This square aspect really pushes us to action. It creates sort of like a tension or crisis mode, making the themes of the last quarter moon surround release, surrender, and letting go. I always say there's no right or wrong rules in spirituality, right? Always do what feels right to you. Be discerning in that. But there's often a lot shared about releasing on the full moon. And if that works for you, I always say there's no right or wrong. Continue doing that. But astrologically speaking, the full moon is a time for celebration. The full moon is a time for gratitude practices, and the full moon is a time to ask for illumination and clarity in your light while the light of the moon is full. Astrologically speaking, release aligns with the last quarter moon, while the light of the moon is releasing, and there's a square aspect pushing us to action, and release is an action. So I always say, if you've been releasing on the full moon and you feel like maybe that doesn't quite align with you, maybe you'd rather celebrate and be in gratitude and ask for illumination on the full moon, try it out. Just try out releasing on the last quarter moon instead and see if that aligns more with you. If it doesn't, go back to releasing on the full moon, right? There's no right or wrongs. I'm just sharing what is more astrologically aligned, okay? So If you want to release on the last quarter moon, which is what is astrologically aligned, choose something to remove from your life that is no longer serving you. This could be a physical object, a personality trait, a relationship, a situation, a belief, really anything. If you like to have a ritual attached to your release work, you can write what you're releasing on a leaf and burn it in a bowl. The reason I say burn it is because this last quarter moon is in Leo, which is a fire sign. I like to also attach my release ritual. So it happened yesterday, but we're still in that last quarter moon energy. So you can totally do it today, right? We usually feel the energy the day before, the day of, and the day after for one of the moon phases. Also, all this week until we get to our new moon, we're going to be in the waning moon, the releasing energy. So you can absolutely do it any day this week. But today, yesterday and today, moon in Leo, fire sign, I like to release with the fire element, which is fire. If it's in a water sign, I like to release with the water element, let a leaf go down river stream or in a body of water, let water take it, so on and so forth, depending on the element. If it's in an earth sign, I like to bury it. If it's in air, I like to just let the wind take it, right? So I like to go with the element that the last quarter moon is in for my release work. Now, on to this week. So last week was action-packed. Typically in astrology, when we have like a really action-packed week, the next week we have a little bit of a slowdown, right? Not as much happening. We do have a couple movements, but again, they're quicker moving planets that are moving often. So this week on Wednesday, November 8th, we have Venus moving into Libra until December 4th. So Venus is the planet of love, beauty, romance, and money. A lot of people don't know that. Venus also rules money, our relationship to money. So we're talking about relationships here. How we spend money. You can look in your birth chart and see how you spend money, right? So when Venus moves into Libra, I call this cuffing season, and it typically happens around fall moving into winter time, right? When like society or pop culture calls this cuffing season, it's Venus in Libra. There's a reason for that. There's an astrological reason for this being cuffing season. And if you don't know, cuffing seasons is when it's like, oh, holidays are coming, I've got to get a significant other. So Libra relates to how we connect with others, okay? If Aries encompasses the me, Libra encompasses the we. So remember, this isn't just romantic relationships, although I laugh and I call it cuffing season with Venus and Libra. Remember, Venus isn't just about romantic relationships. It's all of your relationships. All of those are going to be highlighted during this time, and the balance and harmony or lack thereof in them is what's going to be highlighted, because Libra is the scales of balance. It wants to balance things out. It wants to harmonize. It wants to find solutions, right? It wants to meet in the middle. And so they're all going to be highlighted. The relationships with yourself, the relationships with others, the relationship with money, like I spoke about, and your relationship with the collective as a whole. So you may find that you and others are more forgiving and are just wanting to bring more beauty into the world. So Venus in Libra is a really beautiful energy. Libra is actually ruled by Venus. So Venus loves being in Libra. So there's a harmony there. But as with all placements, there are higher expressions and lower expressions of these placements. So while the higher expression has us connecting with others, right, and forgiving and opening our hearts to compassion, the lower expression can sometimes bring out people-pleasing tendencies, right? I just want to keep the peace. And so it can bring out some of that, and it can bring out codependency tendencies as well. So just be aware of that. If you're somebody who those tendencies are already kind of natural for you, or you're already working on healing those energies, be mindful of that. On Friday, November 10th, we have Mercury moving into Sagittarius until December 1st. So Mercury is the planet of the mind, influencing your thoughts, your communication, and your perception. It is the messenger planet. So Sagittarius moving into Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a fire sign, bringing confidence, but it's ruled by Jupiter, bringing expansion. Okay, so Mercury in Sagittarius wants you to boldly speak your truth and to expand your mind. Stand firm in what you know, but also acknowledge what you don't yet understand. So there's a beautiful duality here. As with all placements, again, there's a higher expression and a lower expression that we can be in with these, right? There's always, and that's where a lot of the stereotypes that you come across with different signs or with different placements come from. They're often the lower expression of that placement or of that sign, and we can choose to move into the higher expression. So the higher expression teaches us, right, to stand in our truth and to always keep learning. That is the highest expression of Mercury in Sagittarius. The lower expression can sometimes forget that truth without compassion is simply cruelty. Sagittarius is honest. It's blunt. Mercury, we're having honest and blunt words. But we have to remember, a lot of times we'll say something to someone that is that's true, but it's not layered with a layer of compassion. And we have to remember, when it's like, I'm just being honest, but if it doesn't have compassion underlying that, then we're just being cruel. And we're filtering it by saying that we're being honest, right? So that phrase is something I love and something I come back to often. Truth without compassion is simply cruelty. And that's the lower expression. So that's what we want to be mindful. We're not in the lower expression, and that we are in the higher expression. So that's what we have for the astrology this week and a little bit of last week, since I wasn't here last Monday. I always like to pull a couple cards at the end just to give us some additional guidance and messages. And from the Tarot of Transformation, we have the Eight of Discs. I believe we had this card recently too, so it's coming up again. It's coming up again, kind of like, hey, remember this? So the Eight of Discs is typically a card of stamina, a card of perseverance, a card of continual work, a card of expanding your knowledge, expanding your craft, expanding your skills, continuing. It's a card of working hard. It is literally my work card when it shows up. But in this deck, it's the Tarot of Transformation, and often they take a spiritual evolution lesson and pull it into the card, and it changes the meanings a little bit. And this card, they speak to perseverance, but more so in the veil of stamina. And you think about when you're running a sprint, you just give it your all, right? And you just sprint from the start line and get to the finish line as fast as you can. But when someone's running a marathon, and I don't know about you, but I want my life to be a marathon, not a sprint. They have to, stamina in that measure is defined as knowing when to push and knowing when to hold back. Knowing when to save some of your energy because you're going to need it later. And so there's the message coming through with that. I think that's especially important with the Vesta Retrograde we have with that inner fire, right? We're reviewing what is fanning our flame and what is putting out our flame, okay? And then lastly, we have a card from the Wisdom of Women Goddess deck. This is a collaborative deck with 42 real women in it and their real messages from their minds and hearts and souls. I am in this deck, and some of my beautiful friends are in this deck as well. It is not available to the public, so you get a little sneak peek of it. So this week's card is Sovereign Sister, and it is from the beautiful Nicole Causey Coleman. And it says, Sovereign Sister, you are whole. You are one who co-creates with Source. We are conditioned to believe in an illusion that we are separate from our Creator, that we are helpless and powerless, and that the more we give to others, the more we will feel loved and fulfilled. When you pull this card, your spirit team is asking you to dive deeply into your fears and discover who you truly are, your soul essence. Nurture, trust, and listen to the small, quiet inner voice. We all have unique talents, gifts, personalities, and interests. It is time you remember you are whole and sovereign being with intention and purpose. Affirmation, I am a sovereign, free will, empowered being of light. Journal prompt, where or in what roles am I losing myself to others? I love that card for this week because I feel like it touches on themes of everything we talked about. I feel like it touches on themes of the Vesta with the our old emotional attachments or family patterns. Are they fanning my flame, or are they putting water on it and pouring it out, putting it out? I feel like it touches on Saturn Direct, taking responsibility, sovereignty, right? I feel like it touches on the last quarter moon in Leo, where we talk about, you know, let go of anything that is dulling my shine. Okay. So I feel like it touches on so much. I feel like it touches on Venus and Libra, where it talked about who am I giving away that to, you know, and I talked about how Venus and Libra is beautiful for collaborating and connecting with others, but can also be a time that if you're a recovering people pleaser or a recovering codependent, we can easily slip back into that energy if we're not mindful. And so I feel like this card, Sovereign Sister, touches on so much of what we just talked about in the Astro Forecast, and I absolutely love that alignment and those synchronicities. And that was our Astro Forecast for this week and a little bit of last week since I wasn't here. Replay will be available if you didn't catch all of it. If you have any questions, let me know. So much love to you. Also, in the next day or two, I am going to be rolling out the 2024 year ahead tarot readings, as well as the 2024 new moon manifestation guides. I usually don't roll those out until December, but sometimes I don't leave enough spots open for the year ahead tarot readings, and I wanted to make sure I put them out in November, early in November, so that everybody who wants one can get one. So those are going to be rolling out. Be sure to stay on the lookout for those. And I will see you all next week. So much love.